seated. We're talking about marriage, happily ever after. If you want to get married, I want to see you get married. If you are married, I want you to stay married. But I don't want you just to survive marriage and kind of get through it. I want you to have an abundant marriage, blessed by God, that you enjoy, that you love, that people enjoy being around you, and they're blessed for the sake of the kingdom. Many times marriage is intended to be so much more than we allow it to be. And I want you to walk in the abundant life and truly be happily ever after. I was thinking about something a pastor said. Pastors say crazy things sometimes, so we know that to be true. If you come to Upward, you know that's true anyway. Pastors can say some crazy things. And I was thinking about a pastor. He really meant to say one thing and said kind of something else at a wedding not long ago. He said, man, it's a nice wedding. Everything's really beautiful. And he wanted to say something kind of profound. And he said, a man is incomplete until he's married. Then he's finished. I thought, not a good thing to say. He's finished then. No, you're just starting a great journey. We're going to look in Genesis 2:24 as we talk about the principle of possession in your marriage and who owns what and how we come together as one in all our possessions. Genesis 2:24, you should be familiar with it by now. This explains why a man leaves his father and mother and is joined to his wife, and the two are united into one. Remember again, a man leaves every relationship and makes the marriage relationship the number one priority. Both spouses are to put the marriage first. Then we talked about cleaving together or being joined together. That is, do things that your spouse likes, serve them, wear a pink shirt on Sunday morning, and you will be joined to your wife. I want to appreciate my brothers today who wore a pink shirt today, knowing that I would have one on. Thank you for your show of support. Joined together to his wife. And then this is what we're going to talk about today. The two are united into one. Two individuals are brought together into one. And we're going to talk about the principle of possession, how truly we unite our lives together, two separate individual lives brought together to be one. Now, in the scripture, this is in the very beginning when God instituted marriage, and he talks about two united into one. We have a process for that today. In Henderson County, you'll go to the county courthouse and you'll get a license that says you're now allowed to be married. And you take that license to a pastor normally, or a preacher a lot of times, or justice of the peace. You take your license there and you say, Henderson County's given us permission to be married. And then there's a ceremony and vows are repeated and rings are exchanged. And then you present the bride and groom and they leave the ceremony and now they're married. This was before any of that. This was before any government structure or any ceremony. God said two unite together into one. And that took place when they were physically intimate with each other. Sexual intimacy brought on marriage, was marriage. That's how it started. Do you know the Bible said and I need to talk about this morning just for a second, when we have sex with someone, we are joined together with them. 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 16 says it this way. Paul writing said, don't you realize now, if a man's joined to a prostitute, now this man intended there to be a relationship with a prostitute, and this man intended that this be a one-time thing maybe, or a secret thing or something. There wasn't an intended permanence to this relationship. This is a one-time thing. A man joins himself to a prostitute, he becomes one body with her. What he intended to be a casual encounter joined him to this prostitute, glued them together in a way that he didn't intend. For the scriptures say the two are united into one. This is pointing back to Genesis 2:24. And what Paul is teaching us is when you join yourself with someone sexually, you become one body with them. Now, some of you may be rolling your eyes saying, oh, we understand, you're a preacher, sex is bad. This preacher says sex is good. It is wonderful. It's real good. I better just stop right there before I get myself in big trouble. My wife just ducked down under her seat back there when I said that. It's a wonderful thing. I learned, now this would strike you funny, I learned something very powerful about sex when I was a kid building model cars. And when I said that in first service, my wife said, "Oh, I understand now why he doesn't know anything." I used to love the Dukes of Hazzard growing up. Any of you watched the Dukes of Hazzard growing up? Bo and Luke, and used to watch that. My grandmother used to love that. We'd watch that on Friday nights. The Dukes would come on, and we'd watch that. Somebody asked me once, "Did you like Bo or Luke better?" And I said, "Daisy." Forget Bo and Luke. I didn't even know they were there. Daisy was the one I watched for. In fact, Lindsay, one of our on our worship team, Lindsay travels a lot, and she is part of these celebrity conventions where they sign autographs. And Lindsay is friends with Bo and Luke and Daisy, the actors that played them. And she heard that I was a big Dukes of Hazzard fan, so she brought me a signed portrait of all of them, and they signed it to me. And Daisy wrote on it, "Love you, Andy." And I'm telling you, I've hidden that from my wife, so she cannot get that away from me. Daisy said, "Love you." It's been a high point in my life. But when I was a kid, I got a little General Lee model. I loved that old Dodge Charger, you know, the General Lee. And I got the model, and I wanted to put it together. And I remember I did several models when I was a kid. And I had that problem then, and I have it now. I'm very impatient, and I want to assemble the thing quickly. I want to get it out of the box and have it all put together in an hour. That's not a good habit to develop if you're building any kind of a model. You have to take it slow. You have to put things together in order. You have to paint the pieces before you glue them together. There's a lot. If you want to be a good model builder, you need to be patient. You need to take your time. You need to go through the proper sequence. Hey, that might be good information and good principle to apply to a relationship as well. Be patient. Get things in the right order. See what I did? I got out the General Lee and I started breaking pieces apart and just started gluing them together. You'll open up a model car and it'll all be in little plastic pieces together, and you set them off to the side. There's also paper called instructions. It's basically useless. You toss them to the side, kind of like some people do the scriptures, you know. I can do this myself. I'll put it together. So I start putting the model together. I remember one part on that old Dodge Charger, the General Lee, they had a crash bar on the front. And I remember I saw that and I said, well, I know where this goes. So I put it together really quickly. I glued it together really quickly. And then I realized you had to paint the grill before you put the bar on. So I thought, no sweat, I'll take it off. But that model glue sets up really quickly. And I got a pair of pliers or something, and I realized those pieces were joined together a lot more tightly than I thought they were. In fact, those two pieces had been glued together and really fused together now into one. That's what takes place in sexual intimacy. See, it's a lot deeper than you've been taught. It's a lot deeper than this culture tries to say. This culture talks about casual sex. There's nothing casual about sex. It's a precious thing created by God. And when you engage in that with someone else, you are fused together with them, and two now become one piece. And if you get that out of order, you're going to experience brokenness. I thought, I'll just pull that crash bar off and I'll paint that grill and then I'll put it back together. How many of you know it doesn't work that way? When I pulled the crash bar off, pieces broke off. And then I had to glue it back together. And then I had to try to figure out how to glue these broken pieces back together. Here's what happened when you are sexually intimate with this one and this one and this one and the other one in what people call casual sex. You become glued to them, and then all of a sudden you think, I got ahead of myself. Here's my advice to you. When we talk about sex, I don't say no, I say wait. The word is not no. If you teach your kids sex is dirty, you're going to mess them up. If you teach your kids sex is dirty, you're going to drive them to the wrong kinds. Don't say no, say wait. Wait. Don't give away your intimacy. Don't give away something precious to you to someone who's not made the commitment deserving of that gift. It was intended that we make lifetime commitments to each other in that act. But we've made it so casual and so easy today. What we don't realize is when we fuse ourselves with someone and then decide it's not going to work and we separate, pieces break off. And I leave a broken piece of myself with them, and they leave a broken piece of themselves on me. And then when I try to join up with someone else, all those broken pieces that are stuck to us get in the way, and we can't really join together and be intimate. Now, if you've been in that situation, if you've made that mistake, Jesus Christ can and will forgive you and heal you and turn it around. So don't leave this place discouraged today, but understand, if you haven't done that, don't start. Because when you are united with someone in sexual relations, you become fused to them, and you need to make sure it is the right person that you can commit your life to. But when you are joined together, when you get it in order, when you make the commitment and you're joined together, here's the lesson I want you to get today. Everything has to come together. What you used to manage as individuals now must be managed as one unit. Everything you owned before marriage now becomes joint ownership. Everything you possessed outside of the marriage, now you bring it together and both of you share it together. You know, the Bible says, even on the very deepest levels, we don't even own our own bodies. 1 Corinthians 6:16, Paul said this: the husband should fulfill his wife's sexual needs, and the wife should fulfill her husband's sexual needs. Verse 4, the wife gives authority over her body to her husband, and the husband gives authority over his body to his wife. What it says is, my body doesn't belong to me anymore, and I must fulfill the sexual needs of my spouse. That works both ways. Do you understand that? But oftentimes in life we use sex as a tool of manipulation. If you do this, I'm going to tell you what's not going to happen tonight. Anybody real in here? Is this uncomfortable for you? It is for me, because my mother's sitting back there. God. I always try to watch out when mom's coming, and they surprised me today, and here I'm talking about this. I'm like, oh my God. But let's work on it. Hey, I'm going to be faithful to deliver the word, even though it kills me. If you don't act this way, then that's not going to happen later. Or if you will do this, then that will happen later. The Bible said there's no room for that kind of bargaining in a marriage relationship, because our bodies belong to each other, not for abuse, not to be dominated, not for something that makes you uncomfortable. But in a very normal, healthy way, we're not to use intimacy as a bargaining chip or as a tactic for manipulating our spouse into doing what we want them to do. We are to make ourselves, our physical bodies, available to our spouses so they can fulfill their needs. Do you understand that? Nothing is independent anymore. Oftentimes we'll have things that are ours. Well, this is mine and this is yours. This is my side of the bed and this is your side of the bed. I'm just got to be curious. How many have your side of the bed and that never changes? Can I see a hand? I do. How many of you change sides? Would you raise your hand? How many of you switch sides? What is wrong with you people? What is wrong with you? I don't understand that. I have my side and that's it. Even if we're in a hotel somewhere, there's this side that I'm on. Do you understand? There's no change in that. It's like the law of the Medes and Persians. It never changes, stuck. We tend to drift into that very quickly in marriage. Sometimes we enter into that in marriage saying, this is my stuff and this is your stuff. Understand, your bodies belong to each other. Your money is brought together in one. Well, this is my money and this is your money. You can't afford to live that way. Well, Pastor, we just had to. We were fighting so much over money. We just decided to have 2 separate checking accounts, and she pays this bill and I pay that bill, and we just have split it up really evenly, and we don't fight anymore. Let me tell you, that's not the way to live. It's not the way that, well, it works for me. It may be work. What you've done is you've pushed off some difficult conversations. You've pushed away some arguments, yes. The house may be a little quieter, but you don't have the level of intimacy you could have under God if you truly brought your lives together. See, it tends to happen in marriage that one of us manages the checkbook and the other one doesn't. They don't want anything to do with it. Isn't that typical? A lot of couples I run into, you've got one person in it who manages the checkbook. They're numbers people. You tend to have a person who saves and a person who spends. How these people find each other, I don't know, but they get together. You got a saver and a spend. Is that true for you guys? How many savers do we have? If you're the saver in the house, okay. Any spenders here today? Yep, the other side always goes up. How many of you manage the checkbook in your house? Can we see that? You're the one. How many of you would be scared to death to hand that over to the... I shouldn't have said that because I'm starting fights today. I'd be worried sick if he ever got a hold of the checkbook. I'm the one that manages in our house, and it can be husband or wife. It really doesn't matter. It's just the one. I'm the one that does it. And what tends to happen is the person that manages that checkbook begin to think they own the money. I don't know if people are getting delivered today or just getting mad. I don't know. We're going to have to pray after this. Second service, a couple fights just about broke out in the service when I started it. The one that manages it tends to think they own it because they deal with the numbers every day. Let me just say something for our side here. When you manage it every day, you're aware of what goes on every day, and you feel like you ought to have more of a say in it because you're carrying that every day. And then the other spouse comes and says, well, we need to buy this. And you say, no, we don't. Have you looked at the checkbook recently? We don't need to buy that. And the other one who doesn't manage it tends to feel like they need to come for permission with everything they buy, and they can't buy a stick of bubble gum without asking you. And it can go there and go a little extreme. And it's easier just to divide it off. We've thought about it before. We've said, why don't you have an account and I'll have an account, and then we don't even have to talk about it anymore. That's not a marriage. It's not a marriage. Your money comes together. And you know what you've got to do? You've got to make up your mind. You're going to make financial decisions together. Not over a stick of bubble gum. But when you got a few $1,000 vacation to go on, you talk about it together. When you're going to buy a car, you talk about it together. You can't just come home and say, guess what, honey, I bought a truck. That's the comment that about started a fight over in this section at second service today. All kind of stirring going on. We about called security. Somebody bought a truck over there is what happened. And God got them this morning. I'm telling you, just nailed them. You can't just walk in and say, I just bought something. You make those decisions together. Well, Pastor, we argue about it. Yep, that's what marriage is like. You talk about it. You disagree. I'm going to tell you, if you'll work on that, you will experience intimacy of your life together. Making those decisions together will draw you together. Yes, there'll be conflict. Yes, it won't be easy. But Alexa and I have struggled with this for a long time. Amazon came out recently with this thing, and you talk to it and ask it questions, and it tells you what to do. It's named Alexa. I can never have one of those. Mine will go crazy all the time. Yeah, I told somebody I got one of those. Yeah. I got to be careful. Y'all are going to get me in trouble today. It's all got to come together. People talk about it. People ask me before, and I'll tell you what I think about it, and you're free to disagree. But people ask me before, what do you think, Pastor, about a prenuptial agreement? That's when you, if you don't know, when you go into a marriage, before you get married, you decide if this thing doesn't work out, we all get to keep our money. Now, there may be some unique circumstances that make that necessary. Maybe you're older and there's children involved and you got to make some decisions going in. But I would say this, if you've got to make a prenuptial agreement with someone before you get married, you better think long and hard about that relationship. Because you're kind of saying going in, if this doesn't work out, if you really want to be honest about it, you're saying when this doesn't work out, I'm pledging my whole life to you, which is pretty funny at weddings anyway. I've married 18-year-olds that were broke, and the husband says, "Unto thee I bequeath all my earthly goods." And excuse me, he ain't got nothing. She doesn't want what he has. But when you enter into it saying, hey, if this blows up, when this blows up, I get to keep all my stuff. If you're going in with that attitude, something needs to be examined a little further. You need to stop and say, wait, do I really trust this person? When you come together, finances come together. When you come together, not only do your bodies belong to each other, your finances do, your children do as well. Your children belong to both of you. Now, some smarmy, smirky people, well, you don't own those kids. Let me tell you something, I paid for those kids. If I don't own them, I have been conned. I've made plenty of payments, still going on. You don't own those kids. Yes, I do. Till they move out and start paying their own bills. Here's seriously where it gets in trouble a lot of times in blended families. Some of you dealing with blended families and trying to bring families together, and that is a challenge. It's real in our world today, and it's something we deal with, and Jesus can redeem it and bring families together. But when you're dealing with a blended family, it's really easy to say, these are my kids, not yours. Mom and Dad will bring it together, and you know, back in the 60s and 70s, there was the Brady Bunch. She's got 3 and he's got 3, and they bring them all together, and it's a one big happy family. It's really tough on blended families because people tend to say, well, that's my daughter, and you won't tell my daughter what to do because you're not her dad. You should have thought about that before you brought all this together. And you should have realized that when you joined together as leadership of the home, both of you were going to have to take a leadership role in the home, and you have set yourself up for failure when you're saying, this is mine and that is yours, and don't cross this line. When you're married, you join everything together. Amen? Your bodies belong to each other. Your finances are with each other. Yes, you'll have some fights, but you'll know each other a lot better, and you'll learn to be like Christ in the midst of those things. Anybody avoid conflict here? Anybody just prone to avoid conflict? Anybody? There's got to be more than this, because that's me. I don't like conflict. I don't like to argue. I'll push things off and put them on the shelf to avoid an argument. If you've been doing that in any area of your marriage, you need to bring that back to the table again. And you don't like this, but you need to talk about it again. If there's any area of your marriage that you still hold possession to as an individual, an area of your life that you're holding as mine outside of the marriage, you need to make up your mind today. You want to be together as one under God. And that's how you're going to succeed in your marriage. One, not two. Amen? I pray you'll let God deal with your heart on this, and that God will bring healing and abundance to your marriage. Let's pray together. Jesus, we love you and thank you.